The meeting. All the women, or rather the witches, were now sitting motionless in their chairs and staring as though hypnotized at somebody who had suddenly appeared on the platform. That somebody was another woman. The first thing I noticed about this woman was her size. She was tiny, probably no more than 4.5 feet tall. She looked quite young, I guess about 25 or 6, and she was very pretty. She had on a rather stylish long black dress that reached right to the ground, and she wore black gloves that came up to her elbows. Unlike the others, she wasn't wearing a hat. She didn't look to me like a witch at all, but she couldn't possibly not be one. Otherwise, what on earth would she be doing up there on the platform? And why, for heaven's sake, were all the other witches staring at her with a mixture of adoration, awe, and fear? Very slowly, the young lady on the platform raised her hands to her face. I saw her gloved fingers unhooking something behind her ears, and then she got hold of her cheeks and lifted her face clean away. The whole of that pretty face came away in her hands. It was a mask. As she took off the mask, she turned sideways and placed it carefully upon a small table nearby. And when she turned round again and faced us, I very nearly screamed out loud. That face of hers was the most frightful and frightening thing I've ever seen. Just looking at it gave me the shakes all over. It was so crumpled and wizened, so shrunken and shriveled, it looked as though it had been pickled in vinegar. It was a fearsome and ghastly sight. There was something terribly wrong with it, something foul and putrid and decayed. It seemed quite literally to be rotting away at the edges, and in the middle of the face, around the mouth and the cheeks, I could see the skin all cankered and worm-eaten, as though maggots were working away in there. Put yourself in the shoes of a young child in the 80s, the 90s, I don't know, what the heck. And you're at a hotel. You snuck in there because you're weird and you want to play with mice, and you accidentally stumble upon a convention of witches that want to kill you. This is the piece that I'm doing. Roald Dahl's The Witches. There are times when something is so frightful you become mesmerized by it, and you can't look away. I was like that now. I was transfixed. I was numbed. I was magnetized by the sheer horror of this woman's features. But there was more to it than that. There was a look of serpents in those eyes of hers as they flashed around the audience. I knew immediately, of course, that this was none other than the Grand High Witch herself. I knew also why she had worn a mask. She could have never moved around in public, let alone begin at a hotel with her real face. Everyone who saw her would have run away screaming. "The doors!" shouted the Grand High Witch in a voice that filled the room and bounced around the walls. "Are they chained and bolted?" "The doors are chained and bolted, your grandness," answered a voice from the audience. The brilliant snake's eyes that were so deep in that dreadful, rotting, worm-eating face glared unblinkingly at the witches who sat before her. "You may remove your gloves," she shouted. Her voice, I noticed, had the same hard, metallic quality as the voice of the witch I had met under the conker tree, but it was only far louder and much, much harsher. It rasped, it grated, it snarled, it scraped, it shrieked, and it growled. Everyone in the room was peeling off her gloves. I was watching the hands of those in the back row. I wanted very much to see what their fingers looked like and whether my grandmother had been right. Oh yes, I could see several of them now. I could see the brown claws curving over the tips of their fingers. They were about 2 inches long, those claws, long and sharp at the ends. "You may remove your shoes." I heard a sigh of relief going up from all the witches in the room as they kicked off their narrow high-heeled shoes, and then I got a glimpse into the chairs of several pairs of stocking feet, square and completely toeless. Revolting they were, as though the toes had been sliced away with a carving knife. "You may remove your wigs," snarled the Grand High Witch. She had a peculiar way of speaking. There was some sort of a foreign accent there, something harsh and guttural, and she seemed to have trouble pronouncing the letter W. As well as that, she did something funny with the letter R. She would roll it round and round in her mouth like a piece of hot pork crackling before spitting it out. "Remove your wigs and get some fresh air into your spotty scalps." Another sigh of relief. arose from the audience as all the hands went up to the heads and all the wigs that hats fell on them were lifted away. There now appeared in front of me row upon row of bald female heads, a sea of naked scalps, every one of them red and itchy looking from being rubbed by the linings of their wigs. I simply cannot tell you how awful they were, and somehow the whole sight was made more gruesome, because underneath those frightful scabby bald heads, the bodies were dressed in fashionable and rather pretty clothes. It was monstrous, it was unnatural. Oh heavens, I thought. Oh help, oh Lord, have mercy on me. These foul, bald-headed females are child killers, every one of them. And here I am imprisoned in the same room, and I can't escape. At that point, a new and doubly horrifying thought struck me. My grandmother had said that with their special nose holes, they could smell out a child on a pitch-black night, right across the other side of the road. Up to now, my grandmother had been right every time. It seemed a certainty, therefore, that one of the witches in the back row would sniff me out at any moment, and the yell of "Dog's droppings!" would go up all around the room, and I would be cornered like a rat. I knelt on the carpet behind the screen, hardly daring to breathe. Then suddenly I remembered another very important thing my grandmother had told me. "The dirtier you are," she said, "the harder it is for a witch to smell you out." How long since I had last had a bath? Not for ages. I had my own room at the hotel, and my grandmother never bothered with such silly things like that. Come to think of it, I don't believe I'd had a bath since we arrived. When had I last washed my hands or face? Certainly not this morning. Not yesterday either. I glanced down at my hands. They were covered with smudge and mud and goodness knows what else besides. So perhaps I had a chance after all. The stink waves couldn't possibly get through all that dirt. Witches of Inkna! She herself, I noticed, the Grand High Witch, had not taken off either her wig, or her gloves, or her shoes. Witches of Inkna! The audience stirred uneasily and sat up straighter in their chairs. Miserable witches! Useless, lazy witches! Feeble-freebling witches! You are a heap of idle, good-for-nothing worms! A shudder went through the audience. The Grand High Witch was clearly in an ugly mood, and they knew it. I had a feeling that something awful was going to happen soon. "I'm having my breakfast this morning, and I am looking out the window at the beach, and what am I seeing? I'm asking you, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a rotting sight. I'm seeing hundreds. I'm seeing thousands of rotten, repulsive little children. It is putting me right out of my food. Why have you not rubbed them out, these filthy, smelly little children?" With each word she spoke, flecks of pale blue phlegm shot out from her mouth like little bullets. "I am asking you why!" Nobody answered her question. "Children smell! They stink out the world. We do not want these children around here." The bald heads in the audience all nodded vigorously. "One child a week is no good to me. Is this the best that you can do?" "We will do better," murmured the audience. "We will do much, much better." "Better is no good either. I demand maximum results. So here are my orders. My orders are that every single child in this country shall be rubbed out, squashed, squirted, skimmeted, and frittered before I come here again in 1 year's time. Do I make myself clear?" A great gasp went up from the audience. I saw the witches all looking at one another with deeply, deeply troubled expressions. And then I heard one witch at the end of the front row saying aloud, "All of them. We can't possibly wipe out all of them." The Grand High Witch looked round as someone had stuck a skewer in her bottom. "Who said that? Who dared to argue with me? It was you, was it not?" She pointed a gloved finger as sharp as a needle at the witch who had spoken. "I didn't mean it, your Grandness. I didn't mean to argue. I was just talking to myself." "You dare to argue with me?" I was just talking to myself. I swear at your grandness. She began to shake with fear. The Grand High Witch took a quick step forward, and when she spoke again, it was in a voice that made my blood run cold. A stupid bitch who answers back must burn until her bones are black. No, no, the Grand High Witch went on. A foolish bitch without a brain must sizzle in the fire of flame. Save me. The Grand High Witch took no notice of her little criminal. She spoke again. An idiotic bitch like you must roast upon the barbecue. Forgive me, oh, your grandness. I didn't mean it. A bitch who dares to say, I'm wrong, will not be with us very long. A moment later, a stream of sparks that looked like tiny white-hot metal fillings came out shooting at the Grand High Witch's eyes and flew straight towards the one who had dared to speak. I saw the sparks striking against her and burrowing into her, and she screamed a horrible howling scream, and a puff of smoke rose around her. The smell of burning meat filled all the room. Nobody moved. Like me, they were all watching the smoke, and when it cleared away, the chair was empty. I caught a glimpse of something wispy white, like a little cloud fluttering upwards and disappearing out the window. The great sigh rose up from all the audience. The Grand High Witch glared around the room. I hope nobody else is going to make me cross today. There was a deathly silence. Frizzled like a fritter. Cooked like a carrot. You will never see her again. Now we can